All right, guys, welcome back to
Hey
7Sixteen.
guys, what is up?
So today we have two very special guests.
Yes.
I'm not going to say their names, but I will let you know that they are our pastors.
Yes.
Yes, here we are.
Hello. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Absolutely.
please.
Ladies first.
Well, my name is Juliet Castro, pastor,
Hey, yes.
and I'm super excited to be here and to join our testimony with you guys.
Yes.
Awesome.
AKA Queen Julie.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
Queen
yes, I
Julie,
forgot about
that's
that.
right.
Queen Julie.
And yeah, I'm Pastor Renato, her husband for almost 12 years, going into 13 years
13
Wow.
in a few weeks. So
Wow.
yeah, we're here. We're excited to
Yes.
Yes.
finally be here.
I know.
And it's not because the invite wasn't there. I mean, we've been trying for a while.
Yeah.
But my wife was pregnant a while
Yes,
ago.
we were just talking about that
Yeah, before we
too.
got here. So for those of you who don't know, we actually tried to make an episode with them a long time ago.
Last
I don't know.
year, I think.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
for sure it was last
year.
year.
So I don't know if any of you remember, but we did a whole cuffing season. So we had a married
that's what it
couple.
was.
We had we were talking about dating, and then what was the other topic? I forget what it was.
It was
three of them.
it was like engagement,
Oh, yes.
dating, engagement,
and actual
then
marriage.
actual marriage.
And we wanted to introduce like kind of like the whole, being a family, like
Right,
the baby portion of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And we wanted them, but unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, fortunately,
Yeah.
she was actually pregnant to Ellie.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
in November, I think you guys
Yes.
told
Yeah,
us.
Yeah, it was right around that time.
I remember
And
telling
I was due December 11th, so I was like, I can't sit for a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
I remember telling Xavier, like, oh, if we go, Julie would not be able to sit for more than 5 minutes without
Oh
a
my
bathroom break
gosh.
every 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
that wouldn't have worked.
Funny enough, we actually had a couple that came in, and she was pregnant as well. I think it was
cool.
every hour she had to get up
There
to go.
you go.
To
She
use
was
the
like,
bathroom.
she's good.
No, she's good. Every hour.
She
we
made
go.
every hour. You see,
Yeah,
babe?
she was a little like she had her date a little further.
There you go.
Yeah. So again, welcome back to 716.
Yes.
We don't really do intros like that anymore. We used to do a whole thing before. We kind of skipped that, and
She
we're
said
moving
she had
into
bought
the
a
meat of it.
mug that she was ready and stuff.
She bought a what?
No, she had a mug from the past.
Oh, yeah, you
I
bought a
was
mug?
gonna buy
Oh,
a mug.
wow.
Yeah, when I went back, Home Goods, it was gone.
Yeah,
already.
we used to share mugs and
That's
stuff like
right.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't do any of that because the way YouTube works, their whole algorithm, you kind of have to keep up with it. So you have to
okay.
adjust to the way.
Just gotta go straight for the
Yeah,
punch.
you just got to go straight into it. Yeah. So for today's episode, we're actually going to talk about infertility. And we brought this lovely couple, which, by the way, we want to get into that relationship segment for a
Yes.
second.
Oh, that's
Before we
right.
get into the whole story, the journey.
Right.
But we wanted to bring that up because we know that it's actually more common than we think. Infertility is something that affects many families.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, let our viewers know, how did you guys meet?
Yeah,
At what age?
what is the love story?
Because I don't
How
remember
you
the
started?
age.
That's a whole different episode.
Give us a little briefing.
You probably will need a whole different hard drive just for that. 'Cause then
Because
there's
he has his point of view, and then I
and
have
then
my
she has
own.
her
I need to
point of
hear
view.
that.
So
I need
it's
to hear
like-
them.
So could we get a
Let's sum it
short
up.
summary of each view, I guess? I don't know.
short. She fell in love with me, and I said yes. All right, let's go into fertility. No, but yeah, I mean, it was an interesting
We
ride.
met when we were young in a church that we used to go to,
That's right.
and we were friends there, and then we kind of like started growing up.
Who showed interest first? Was it you or was
He
it?
did.
Not the who showed interest first.
You see what I mean?
See, this is the part. This is the
Okay,
one.
so to
you
your
knew
point
the
of
question
view.
that would set off the bomb, Adrian.
Pero con paz. Let's
Yeah,
have this
of
peaceful.
Of course. Well, the funny thing is, we were both young,
Yeah.
I think, but I was older than her. Obviously, I'm older than her by two and a half years. But now that's like nothing.
nothing, that's-
right?
yeah.
But when you're like 15 and the other
12.
one's like
It's like,
12 and a
he's
half,
old.
that's
Oh my
like,
gosh.
what is this girl doing around here? Go away, go to
Brace-
kids ministry.
I had braces, so I was like,
Right, like I'm in the youth, and she's like transitioning from kids ministry, and it's
Oh
like,
my
wait,
God.
you're still too young. But no, we
Wow,
used to
yeah.
hang out. The funny thing, as
Yeah,
friends, we all would hang out with friends in our previous church, and then she was that. It was there's always in every youth group that one kid who thinks he's a teenager, right?
Oh, yeah, and they're
right?
not.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
probably think about a few.
Yeah, there's a couple.
There's always one, and they're like hanging with the teenagers, and it's not really the term. Well, that was Julie,
Well,
right?
because I had 2 older sisters.
So you
okay.
already
So
used
you had that
that.
influence.
Yeah,
You
so
were-
I
you were
was
kinda-
always with them, and
Right.
you know that's why I was with the bigger crew.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. Well, there was a reason for that, and then she, we start growing together. Then I hit my 17-year-old, and she turns like 15. Then I turn 18. She turns 16, and that's as so.
Now
then,
you're like, okay, I see you.
then she starts losing the glasses, losing the braces, and it's like that girl from the movies that they just take off the glasses and
The wind
it.
comes in.
Yeah, and that's it. It's like, whoa, that's a transformation. So that's what happened, and then.
But
then
you're
we-
saying that she showed interest first.
Oh,
In your
right.
eyes, how was that?
I
Wait, is it
guess.
because she was showing up more? Is that why you think she showed interest
like
first?
like she would always ask about me to her mom.
come on,
and
Julie, come on.
and her mom, don't say you didn't, like Joshua would say, diga la verdad. Right? You're a pastor. He always says that. You gotta say
Well,
the truth.
because he used to like me too, so
Okay.
I was like, okay, he kind of like wants something. So you know what, mommy, how's Nato? What is he doing? So you know what I'm saying? Like it kind
Yeah.
of like went into like
That's cute.
more
So that's
like,
the point we always
asking.
who came first, the chicken or the egg, it's that.
I didn't realize you guys were so young though, and like knew each other that
we knew
young.
each other.
Wow.
Yeah, and then
Wait, so how long? How in general? Like how long?
Have we
you
been
know,
together?
after you guys became exclusive? Like you guys are dating now.
right?
Up to now, how long is that? What's
It's
that length in
19
years?
years.
19 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
19 plus?
No, 19. I think 19.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was.
He's
like, let me
I'm
do
about
my
to do math
calculator.
right now. Hold on.
Okay, you guys do the
Handy
math.
dandy calculator.
No, so we were dating for 5 years.
Okay.
A year and 3 months engaged.
And now you said you've
And
been
now
married
we're
for
13.
21
13
years.
years. How much is that?
Wow.
It's 21 years.
Oh, 21 years. So my math is wrong.
Wait, is it? Maybe it's 21 years
Including the
in a
dating.
specific date.
We started dating.
They weren't prepared for this
2005.
question.
Right.
Yeah, no, we're
2005.
no, I don't remember the year. I remember the day though. It was May
May
13th,
13th,
right?
2005.
Man, that's how we're gonna get.
May 13th. So
We're
it's
not gonna
been-
remember our
it's-
date at
it's
some
been
point.
Definitely.
Okay,
My
so
calculations
we've
say
been-
21 years, so it definitely would be 20 for sure.
Oh,
That's
que
22
lindo.
decades.
Yeah.
Now you guys know why I have a bunch of white hair.
That's wisdom. That's wisdom.
I know, right?
Aww.
So yeah, it's been that
Yeah,
it's
it's
been
been
that
a
long.
journey.
We've been in a relationship, and it's been the best. I would say the best 20 years of our lives.
That's awesome.
Aw,
Definitely.
you
That is awesome.
guys.
We've learned together. We've grown together.
Right.
We've laughed a lot throughout the years. So that's really kept the relationship solid. Finding joy. And from laughter to crying to everything, a little bit of everything. In 20 years, you get to live a lot,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for
Good
sure.
and the bad.
That's for sure.
Like we're at what year 7 right now, and we're here
You're
like
7 married.
7 married.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're here
Right.
just all like, I feel like it hasn't been a lot, but it has been a lot, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I just think of all the years to come because like right now it seems 7, but then it's like as I get older, then it's gonna be like, wow, I've been with you like 3/4 of my life, like stuff like that. You know, when you start
Right.
thinking
Yeah.
about it in
Right.
that
Yeah.
way, it's
Yeah.
all like, wow, you've been together
7 years.
a really long
Yeah.
time.
And together, 15,
Together more than half
going
of my life
16?
now.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
You guys
so
have been there también.
I know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you guys, as a matter of
babies.
fact, you guys were one of the first young adult couples that
Yeah.
I got to marry. Like I had
Yes.
other weddings before that, but from the youth that we had growing up with us, you guys were the
actual
trailblazers.
Yeah.
We were one of the
Maybe.
first
You're
people.
definitely
Yeah,
that
because
year.
Yeah.
think about
Okay.
it. We
You're
got
one
married
of
when
the
we were
first.
23.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
I was 23
So, really?
Oh yeah.
For sure, you guys are one of the first. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you guys spread the fever around, and everybody started
Everybody
marrying.
started,
And then
yeah.
my agenda started getting full, and I was like, oh my God, I have so many
Yeah.
weddings coming
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
I feel like even now, like we're having a lot of people getting married, and I'm just all
Yeah.
like, oh, like I love that, but it also reminds me of like how fast time is going,
Yeah.
and I'm just all like, oh my gosh, and now seeing like what AYC is now, and I'm
Right.
just all like, I used to be in AYC.
The fact that I can't be in AYC.
Right.
But all right. So getting into the whole, I mean, we're already into the marriage, right? Yeah. At what point in your marriage did you think you were ready to start trying? Was this like right away, or was there like a period?
So we got married October 23rd. And then we decided to kind of wait a year, right? A year and something.
Enjoy a bit.
Yeah, like a year and a half or 2 years to kind of enjoy our marriage, kind of mingle with each other, whatever. And that's when we kind of said, you know what, let's get ready to have babies. Right.
Wow.
Obviously you're never ready to have babies, but you kind of want that baby fever, right?
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, let's try, and then that's when we started trying.
And you were ready right away, like you're the one that initiated it, or it was kind of like a mutual.
It was both.
Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah, definitely. I think it was mutual.
Yeah,
we both wanted the experience, and we were ready. And I've always been a fast maturer, so even from my youth days, I could see myself married at a certain age and settled by a certain point.
You're already thinking of that.
Yeah.
Versus like some people now, sometimes they're like, oh no, not till mid-30s or whatever.
Right. So in our case, that's what we were at. That's our point in our life. We were already at that position. We had our home already, which we bought it when we got married. I already had finished school. So I think, it
was like the next step.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Absolutely. It was like, after 2 years that we decided, okay, now is the time let's complete this circle,
Right.
Let's put some noisy kids in this house. It's too quiet sometimes.
And I'm sure you guys also had like people, because I feel like as soon as people get married, they get the instant like, so when are the kids coming?
Oh, yeah.
Did you feel like you had that?
Did
Like bombard?
we?
Well, especially you guys, right? Because
Wait, instantly?
Immediately. Like a week before we got married.
Right, you're right.
Before we got married? Oh my
They're
God.
like, so wait, when is the baby? I'm like, let me get married first.
What do you want me in sin?
Like, hold on for a second.
Wow.
Yeah,
for
that happens a lot.
Yeah. Definitely, friends, families, mostly our families. Like my parents, didn't have any grandchildren yet and so forth. So there's always that.
Oh, there's always that pressure. Yeah, I mean, even her mom, before we got married, her mom was like, okay, so I know you guys are going to wait, but how long? That was the first question.
Mom.
It wasn't where are the kids, it's how long before.
Right.
Give me an idea so that way, I can know when I'm going to become a grandmother.
Yeah. Versus like his mom, she's already, right now she has 4.
She was already a seasoned grandmother.
Right.
Oh,
She's been a grandmother for some time now, so she's all like, okay,
the pressure wasn't on me.
Yeah.
At all.
Right.
At all. And I guess my upbringing too, because I had so many siblings, I was ready to get married right away because I wanted to get out of the house. And,
he's like, I want to get out of here.
No, I wanted to get out of the house.
Married, Adrian.
I was very, like you said, I was very mature at a young age.
Yeah.
Even at 14, I was telling her, I was like, you're going to be my wife. Like, I'm not playing her. I'm not here to play
around.
Tell
me that.
At 14.
And I was like, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah. I know that's a big,
you scared her.
Like, exactly.
A little bit. He definitely did, but I'm like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So even at that age, I was like, I'm not here to joke around. Like, I'm here to find my wife. That's it. Yeah. So I was ready to get married. I fell in love with her, and we did. But I wasn't ready to have a child. Having a child terrified me. Yeah. Right. And I think it was just that. It was the noise. I grew up with too many siblings. I grew up fighting too much. I just wanted a break. So
I feel like even us going to like Walmart, I still never forget this. One time, I think we were buying like bed sheets or something. And like you hear like maybe 2 aisles down, like a baby's like crying, like their eyes out. And I just see him go like, I need a second. And I'm like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I just give me a sec. I'll be right back. And I'm like,
the type of cry where
that
you
was
can
like
hear
10 aisles
their throat
down.
Almost. Like the you can hear like the saliva like jumping up and down in their throat. It's that kind of cry. It was just a terrifying type of cry. And I'm like, I need a second.
He's like, I need to breathe. This is a lot. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I didn't even notice there was a baby cry. Like,
Well, it's only natural, right, to kind of want to enjoy that stage, right? The Bible says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. And when you find a wife, you want to enjoy it, right? You want to enjoy that stage. And that's something that, it obviously when to have a child is something personal to each individual and to each couple.
Yeah.
But it's, when they've asked us, Pastor, what do you think? What's your stance on this? I always give us our example because your story the best.
Right.
That's your best story to talk about, your own life and your own testimony, your own surroundings. So we've always said that we wanted, in our case, I always thought it was smart to strengthen those ties.
Yes.
Correct. That marriage first before you add another load on top.
Yeah.
And I try to choose my words wisely, not a burden, because
Yeah,
a child should never be a
Right.
burden.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
child is a blessing, but it does become a load because it comes with a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah.
So before I see Juliet as, the mother of my children, I want to see Juliet as my wife. And so those are one of the, kind of the drawbacks of, I guess, having a kid really fast,
Yeah.
and I have respect to those that might decide that way for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Like I said, it depends.
Everyone's different, yeah.
Everybody's
Yeah.
different. There's a lot of people that have gotten married. They're already in their late 30s or 40s or mid 40s, and they want to have a kid fast because time's ticking. Factory's
Yeah.
about to close. So I understand them. Right?
Yeah. That's
true.
very true.
I understand.
Yeah.
Shout out to my boy Wilford if you're hearing this. Like, he was no joke. He
Let's
three
go.
all of a sudden, papa, al horno. So, but yeah, so we understood that. So we're like, we want to strengthen our relationship first, so I could see you, and that's what I suggest to some couples, like, because once there's children come, then
It's a different ballgame.
it's a different.
Like,
Totally
I'm only
different.
babysat, and I'm just all like, wow, this is a
Different.
lot.
Yeah.
yeah.
So now I'm here, like, to have the child always with you. I mean, that's
Your
you know?
life changes
Right.
completely.
Right.
Now it's not me and you. Now
Right.
you have to have the attention, everything on that baby. So it's like, it's totally different.
Yeah.
it's a life changer.
It is.
And so, I mean, this is all great. Honestly, I mean, everybody always gets inspired by a lovely couple story, right?
Right,
But
yeah.
to dive into something that's a little deeper, when did you guys realize that you were starting your infertility journey?
So the last one you answered first, right?
Yes.
I guess I'll go this
Yes.
one.
It's your turn.
So after like the 2-year mark, that's when we're like, okay, you know what? We've enjoyed our marriage to the point that we're like, I think we're ready to have the children come into our life. We always wanted it badly.
Yeah.
I know I did. She wanted it, but we wanted, like I said, to strengthen that marriage first. But once that time came, which was at the 2-year mark, then at that point, then we decided, okay, no more barriers. Let's go for it. We weren't preventing it from happening.
Right.
And then, it was taking time, 6 months, nothing happened. Okay, well, it's not always fast. And then I think a year came back, nothing happened. It's like, okay, anytime now.
Starts to raise a little
Of course,
concerns,
a
but
little
you're like,
red
maybe it's
flag.
just us, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Also,
like,
the year mark was like kind of like a,
because I feel like you
like
hear,
it made your eyes shift a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
Like,
At the year, for sure, we're like, okay, but all right, let's keep enjoying marriage. But
Yeah.
I think we
like
got
the
there.
timing's just wrong.
yeah.
Yeah, we're like, we kind of already enjoyed marriage. We're good with the
Right.
kids. Let's bring them
Yeah.
forward. And
Right.
I think by a year and a half, we're like, all right, nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Let's go and visit doctors to see if there's anything that we could do.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think like at the year and a half mark, we visit just
My gynecologist.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're just asking questions.
Yeah, just
and-
asking questions. She said, try this, try that, and then,
They didn't want to alarm anything either. Like they didn't
Yeah,
give you
no,
any
right.
serious tests or anything like that.
No, not
Correct,
there.
not
Did you
at that
take
point.
an ovarian test, the egg count, basically?
No, not at that
You didn't?
point. No,
Oh,
no,
no.
not at that point.
Not at that
So
point.
my gynecologist just said, do this, do that, and then we tried everything. We even bought like a
I actually remember that time because I remember
You were at a
because we would do a sleepover.
Yes, right.
But yeah, we did a sleepover one time, and then I remember like all the girls were upstairs in the attic, and I remember she had like a watch,
There you
Yeah.
and she
Oh,
was
wow.
all
Good
like,
memory.
yeah.
So
And
yeah,
she
see,
was
we're not
like,
lying about this.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
witnessed.
She had like it was like a white watch, and then she was all like, yeah, because we're trying, and I remember we were all like, what? Like,
Yeah,
oh my
yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
But that was it. That was
And
like
that
the
was
last.
very early on when we
That was
started.
like when we
just
first started going to the church.
Yeah.
I
Right.
believe.
Yeah, that
like
was really early
ish
on.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
I
that
do
wasn't-
remember that.
It wasn't an Apple Watch,
No.
right?
No. That's a very techie watch.
I know. What is that?
it would tell me when I would ovulate, and
Okay.
then you would have to kind of like jump to action.
Yeah.
We gotta go.
Yes,
Can't waste any time.
yeah, and that kind of brought a little stress.
Brings
to
stress,
our,
right.
Stress to our relationship because the moment is not there. You know what I'm saying? It
Right.
has to be
It's not
Forced.
spontaneous
Oh,
anymore.
I see. So it was almost
Planned.
Forced.
yes, meaningless. It was just all right. Let's just get this over with.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I
yeah.
think it kind of became more that way once we really got diagnosed, because at the beginning we weren't too sure. It's like, okay, but then that's when we visited specialists. Fertility doctors.
Wait, so just to reverse it back. So at this point, it was more like, okay, this is when you got the watch. There wasn't any really like diagnosis or anything yet.
No.
Okay.
It
was just
help.
a little
Oh,
help.
I see.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
It was just a little help, but
And this is a year into your decision of
like
making.
a year and a half.
Past a year and a half.
Past like a
Yeah.
year and a half
Yeah.
until I was already starting to try it. So yeah,
Okay.
she would have the watch and things like that, and every woman has different ways of calculating, knowing her body, etc.
Yeah.
But like she says, yeah, it brought a level of stress
Right.
into the relationship because it became mechanical. Like now
Yeah.
you're trying to time something, force something that's
Right.
like should be just spontaneous and it just
Right.
be in the moment,
Yeah.
right? But now it's like all of a sudden your alarm goes off and it's like feeding a dog
Time to clock.
yeah, and it's like
Time to-
all right, so
God.
put everything away, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Obviously in a
Right,
relationship,
right.
after being married for almost 13 years, you've come to learn that the moment has to be right and
Right.
everything. It's
a natural flow of things.
Correct.
Yeah, nothing should be forced. Nothing should be like, all right, well, you have to do this because you have to do it, right?
Right.
But in this case, obviously, it's like, okay, we're trying a different
have to.
approach. So I can only imagine.
Funny
yeah.
story. I walk in one day and I go into the kitchen. I'm about to make a sandwich. I don't know if you remember that. And I open one of the cabinet drawers, and then all of a sudden I see a bunch of like almost 100 little mini tiny eggs. I'm like, what is this?
What is that?
Exactly. That was my question. And I'm like, babe. And
Is this an
"What?"
announcement?
No, and there's a bunch of eggs. There was a lot of them, and I'm like, what are? I've never seen them. They were
They're
small.
like tiny, small eggs, and they have like spots.
They can have
They're like
spots.
white with like dark spots.
I've
Oh, that would give me
seen them.
goosebumps.
Right. I'm like, I don't know if there was a witchcraft going on. I don't know. What? I was about to start rebuking.
I'm trying everything. I'm ruling it all out.
I'm telling you, I'm gonna start. I almost brought my Bible out, start anointing the house again. I'm like, babe, what is this? And then she comes and she's like, oh, my mom brought me these from Colombia or
Son
something.
huevos de corniz.
Oh.
Is this like a
So
like
codorniz
an ingredient? or-
No, it's
no,
like a
codorniz
bird.
I think it's like a bird. It's almost like a pigeon.
Yeah, it's
type,
a
I
pigeon,
think. Yeah.
but the eggs are super tiny, and it's
They're
good
supposed to help for
yeah, they're supposed to
fertility
help.
or
So supposedly, I believe in South America, they say a lot
Yeah.
that helps with infertility, or that it just helps stimulate your body,
Yeah.
whatever, to be
Does
able to
something in
become
there.
more
Right, but you
fertile.
consume this.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Okay,
eat
okay.
it.
Yeah. I mean, you can make omelets with it
Yeah.
or whatever.
Right,
I
right.
mean, you probably need 100 of those little things to equal like today's eggs.
Listen,
Some
I
egg
ate
whites.
omelets with that.
know.
I ate egg sandwiches. I ate carne con
That's
con
right.
So you were
huevito.
trying
I ate
everything.
Oh, wow.
everything.
So,
Yes.
yeah, we
Wow.
ended up
Committed there.
I'm telling you.
I mean,
at that
yeah,
point-
after a year and a half, you're like, okay, some people like, I mean, and that's a whole other thing, right? Like for some people, it can happen like in a month or like in this or not even wanting, right?
At this point, we're like at 3-year mark
Yeah.
from our wedding.
Yeah.
Because the first, or a little more, like around 3-year
Yeah.
mark. Yeah, because we got married. We didn't want anything for like a year and a half, almost 2.
It's been like a year and a half of like trying different things.
Right. So
Wow.
I'm telling you, we had the watch, we had the eggs checked. She's taking her temperature, so she had the little thing to check her temperature. I mean, we were really trying.
we
we
were
were
trying.
really going through
Yeah.
all the avenues possible to be able to conceive and be pregnant.
Yeah.
But it wasn't happening.
Nope.
You know?
Yeah.
It wasn't
Oh my
happening.
gosh. I can
and
only
then,
imagine.
And then, so at this point, you went to a specialist, and they're telling you, did they give you anything, a diagnosis of any kind?
Yes, they both of us went to an infertility doctor, and they checked everything, and my tubes were blocked.
Oh,
So
okay.
they said, yep, you're infertile, so you can't have any babies.
Oh.
You know,
Wow,
it's really-
just like that. Just
yeah,
like
yeah.
You can't have period. They're saying ever.
It's different methods of
Gotcha.
of conceiving.
Okay.
And they said with yourself you can't, like yo solita no podía.
right, like
It
you
was
need
right.
additional help.
I needed
somehow.
some
Right.
help.
It was
Okay.
really difficult.
It was
definitely.
very.
Chances
He
were-
said, yeah. He said it was very, very, very difficult for us to
Right.
have kids.
Correct.
And-
And
Go ahead.
And then that's when we started, seeking, help, professional help.
Right.
So we both ended up taking a test, and we both ended up seeing. So after that, they wanted to see me as well as a spouse. Obviously,
Right.
you're
To
trying
see if there's
Just to
anything.
see, like, right.
If your
Trying to find a
soldiers are up and
solution.
running.
One or the other
Right.
had.
Right.
So also, I also got the pink slip or the red slip.
The red slip.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Like
so
when
we
the
both
results?
ended up
both, yeah.
being diagnosed with
Infertility.
Oh,
infertile.
wow. It wasn't just you.
No, so it was both. So we're like, wow. So if there was a, in the human eye, in the human element and perspective of things, if you had a slight chance, it's out the window at this point.
Basically, yeah,
now you have
because
double
right.
infertility going on.
Right.
So I remember we were there. We were sitting down in front of the specialist. Now, the specialist was a doctor who was really well known in the area. We researched him, and we really wanted to get the best educated, perspective and diagnosis as possible.
I mean, this is such a
course.
huge thing in life,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So you want to make sure you're going with like top-notch people.
Right. Seriously. So we're sitting there. The results came in, and I'm anxious. Like what's happening? Here we go. And then, I could still remember like if it was yesterday. I'm sitting there in front of the desk. I'm leaning a little bit, and when he ends up telling us, well, things don't look too good. I just remember feeling that like in my gut, like in the stomach. You just feel like a punch.
Like you don't forget that.
No.
feeling.
Right, and I
That's
was just
something
gonna
you
ask
probably
that.
will never forget either.
It's a weird feeling that you get.
Right.
All your dreams, all your everything down the drain.
It's
just
basically
like,
someone saying like, you want this and this will not happen for you.
And he
it's
hadn't
like,
even gotten
what
into
do you do?
detail.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
He just said things don't look good.
Yeah.
And immediately you're like, well, what
That's
can
it.
possibly
What's
follow up
happening?
to these
Right.
words that he's saying?
Right.
And it only gets worse. And then as he starts saying, well, listen, the results have come in, and then he says, well, both of you are categorized as being infertile. You for this reason, you for this other reason.
Wow.
And then at that point, he's talking.
I'm sure you're just like not hearing anything.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Like he's talking.
Yeah, it's all muffled at that
Yeah,
point.
it's like, that's what I'm
Right.
saying, like it
Oh,
went
man.
down the
You're
drain.
just playing a movie in your head. You're
Dude.
just all like, what do I do?
I've seen it in movies.
Yeah.
But it's actually
lived
true.
it.
Like
Yeah,
he
you lived
continued talking, and I'm just there, but I become nauseous. Like I became nauseous. Like the bad news. So when he ends up saying your chances are extremely, extremely low that you will be able to have children. When he said those words, I became sick, literally to my stomach. Like
I can only imagine.
Like I felt
can
like
only
throwing up in that moment, like vomiting.
Right.
Because the news was so disastrous, and it was
It's
so
impactful.
so
It's just
impactful.
like, yeah.
To me, to us, that it's crazy how you can receive a news that's so strong that could affect immediately, your health.
Right.
Yeah.
Immediately. So I felt sick.
Wow.
I kind of didn't want to continue being there too long, but we had to endure until, all the information was given
Right.
and whatnot. And I remember going home, and that ride home was
Oh my
The
God.
worst,
one of the
I'm
most
sure.
difficult rides.
It was so emotional.
ever.
All right.
Yes, for sure. I mean, we were both crying on the way there.
Yeah.
My voice might sound like it might crack a little bit, but because we're reliving the moment.
I can only imagine, yeah.
Being in that car, and like nobody wanted to talk
Right.
with each other.
You guys
like,
are
what do you
just
say? What do you
what
say?
Do you, what do you
You're
say?
in shock. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
what happened? What did we do wrong? You
Right.
know? Like,
Right.
You dream, you buy a house, you have the rooms ready, like in your mind, you're like, this is gonna be this, it's gonna be that, and then you get a news like that.
Yeah.
So the ride for sure home was
Yeah.
tough, but obviously, in those moments, this is where God's peace. This is the difference from a believer
That's right.
Yeah.
to someone who doesn't have God in
Right.
their life, because
Right.
we felt, God's refuge and support and His strength, His peace throughout the rest of our journey, just as He done till that day.
Yeah.
From that day forward,
That's
we
right.
would see His peace and everything. But still, in your human nature and your flesh, that day
Still-
was
it was
tough.
tough.
It was one of the hardest. I think that was probably the second hardest, which the hardest was something we'll probably get later down in the episode, which it's like you're almost there, but then this
But not
happens.
quite,
So
yeah.
you better stay tuned, because it's gonna get even better.
Yeah. Wow.
Hey, thank you for that.
I know.
You're welcome, Xavier.
I gotta ask though. I mean, this is for the guys in the guy viewers, right? But what possibly could go wrong with a guy that would be considered infertile?
I don't even remember the exact diagnosis.
Okay.
Because at that point, it's like, I didn't
just
care what
accepted
he said.
it. Like you just said what he said.
At that point, like literally everything
it was a
blurred
blur.
out. All I remember is that both of you, your chances are extremely slim of being able to conceive kids.
Yeah.
From that point forward, it's like I didn't want to, because there was little to no hope at that point. It's like, we could probably work on her, but even then it's a little difficult. So it's like at that point it wasn't even important.
Right.
To be quite honest. It was just like, all right, what do we do next? How do we find refuge and support through this process now? Because now from that day forward, it's like you're ready to live out this news, right? Trying to find peace in it in the middle of the storm, but it's like, all right, we gotta.
But also, what do we do?
But what do we do? How do we move forward? How do we continue living? Do we just give up on our dreams? Do we start believing? Or like, what happens in that moment? So that became more of a priority in my case, right?
Right.
Like, not why and was it hereditary? At that point,
like it doesn't even matter.
Yeah,
like we just need to figure out
matters.
the solution at this
Everybody
point.
will react different. Some people were like, "Well, why? Is this something I
Yeah.
did?"
Yeah.
At that point, I didn't even cared because I never thought that would be a reality. Like I thought that was like a dream or more like a nightmare, right? That we were living in that moment with that diagnosis. So it's like at this point, it's like I have to move on. We have to move on. What's next?
And prior to this, were you guys already kind of like that 7 p.m. alarm going off
I thought
again?
I turned it off. I'm sorry.
But prior to this, like, were you guys already like were you guys ready to receive some kind of news like that? Or were you guys just all like, oh, this is just a regular doctor checkup? Like, were you guys already looking at different options of like things that, you could possibly do? Or did you kind of just go in there like, oh yeah, like maybe it's just something simple? Or did you have a feeling that it was something else?
I really thought it was like, like I didn't.
Like something that you could have easily fixed.
So you weren't ready.
At least I could imagine you didn't expect anything to be you.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
We never expected it. It just hit us like a trailer going 100 miles an hour or a train.
Yeah,
like it just.
I didn't because my mom had 5 kids.
Right.
My sister had 2. My other sister had 1.
That's right.
So
you
I'm
have
like,
a really big family.
I have a big family, so everybody's having babies. So I'm like, okay,
it's like
let's
Oprah.
try.
You have a kid. You have a kid.
You're like, hello?
You have a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, it's probably something easy that we can fix, and it's just whatever, hormonal.
Let's just rule it out. Let's just see what's going on. Yeah.
But we got the news. So
wow,
man, and years wise, what are we talking? You know what? Better question. Within this process, all right, this is a year and a half. No, let's say 2 years at this point.
You're saying 3 years at this
3
point.
years.
3 years
from our
Plus,
wedding date.
Yeah.
3 years from your wedding date, you received the fact that the both of you can't.
Right.
I gotta ask because I know that this is a question that comes up, and it's a question that a lot of couples hate, especially when they're in this process. Right. How did you guys feel about the whole question with where the children, like when are they coming? And obviously you guys haven't said anything in public yet, right?
Yeah. No, we when we were going through this, we were keeping everything to ourselves.
Right.
We were just saying, we're gonna wait, and we'll wait.
Yeah.
But obviously people, it's for your 4th year anniversary, your 5th year anniversary, and it's like, where are the kids?
I know.
Yeah.
¿Cuándo va a tener niños? ¿Cuándo va a tener hijos?
And you're like, you have no idea. Wow.
That's the thing. I feel now that I went through this, I feel like you should never say that because you never know what the person is going through. Maybe they're infertile and they can have babies, and that's something that they're struggling with. So you don't say those type of questions. But obviously people want the best for us. You know what I'm saying? People, ay, los niños son una bendición, but
it's not malicious when they ask.
Yeah,
but it still hits you because you're like,
you're going through this.
And it's a constant reminder of, I can't.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And you don't even know.
So we never took offense of it because we understood that everybody's intent was, especially with family. Well, at that point, family.
Oh yeah, family.
Ended up knowing, but we understood people around us, friends and family. They loved it to a point
and
that they wanted to know.
Pastors of a church church. It's
exactly.
Also,
and those were the ones that would ask the most, all the church members. And we just had to find, we never took it against them.
Of course,
Absolutely never. We understood that it was always with good intention. But in that moment, it just reminded you of your reality.
Yeah.
So it's like everything pauses and it's like, okay, how do I respond? Do I respond saddened, or do I just kind of have to respond in an automatic way so people are not aware of what's happening and they could see your demeanor? So you just had to respond in like, okay, well, at God's timing it will happen. And so we were at the same time, we were declaring something, because the thing about this, even though we were going through that, something I guess I kind of mentioned a little bit, but not into depth, is that we did have faith that God was going to fulfill his promise somehow.
Yeah.
So we were still holding on to those promises that God had given to us, either through prophetic words that we had received, even in our intimacy, in our relationship with God. I know that God
speaks so clearly sometimes, and sometimes you're like, I just know, but that waiting period is all like, okay, but God, but like when?
That's that's that waiting period, right?
Yeah.
So we still trusted in God. We still trusted that somehow he was going to do it. But when somebody would ask you, that just immediately for a split second, it reminded you of your reality. And it's like, it made you like reshuffle and be like, wait, but we're trusting in God.
Right.
Okay. And then you responded. So that happens in like milliseconds.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody says hi to you. So what's happening? So when or where are you guys taking forever? It's like,
you're
pause.
Think
about it.
Yeah.
Receive faith and just respond to it. But it would always make you go back to that moment. It's like every time they asked me that question, I went back to that specialist
the
office for like a split second. So it's like constant reliving that office visit.
And it never made you want to break a tear, I mean, in the middle of a question, or you just instantly knew how to respond and you just kept your cool.
Yeah, yo decía en el tiempo de Dios, hermana, sí, van a venir.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Still declaring,
Right.
Yeah.
Now, and at this point, because I know you guys said you guys had already received that promise, right? So it's like, wow, I just lost my stuff. I'm so sorry.
The notorious questions.
You have no idea. I do this a lot.
Yeah, she'll come back to it. Yeah. I do have to ask though, because I've watched some videos on this, specifically because I knew I was getting ready to do this podcast. But there was one question that would come up, and a lot of the responses, the response of the couple would be, I felt like this, like I felt like I was a failure to my spouse. In this process, what was your response? I mean, how did you feel towards him? And
a great question.
Same vice versa.
That's a great question.
Obviously, me as a woman, you know that you're a woman, you have kids, right?
Right.
So I'm like, okay, this man, he wants a child.
Right.
And me personally, I can't give it to him. So yeah, I did feel some kind of like, I can't do it for him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I blamed myself sometimes because of my past. Because of my, when I was a teenager, I would, I kind of apart from God, and I lived my worldly life.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And one day in the car, we were riding, and I just broke down.
That's truly on the way back. It was on the way back from that visit.
I broke down and I said, it's all because of me. Because of me being this way,
And I'm sorry not to cut you off, but you didn't know at this point that he couldn't, or did you both receive the news?
This was after.
I see.
We both.
Okay.
We both. Yeah, we both. And I said, it's all because of me, because of my past, my worldly past, my worldly ways. This is happening. And then, I felt like I couldn't give him something that he really wanted. Me como una mujer,
Right.
And that day I broke down.
Yeah, I remember.
And you said, no, babe, don't think that way.
That one just has a way, right, of like bringing our past back up to us when you're already like so far gone from that.
Right.
And it's
like he
that.
got you defeated, and now let's add some more sazon to this defeat.
Right. Well, at that point, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that was, I remember that day clearly. Like, we didn't speak the whole ride home until close to getting home. That's where she broke down, and she kind of felt guilty in a way. And she says, well, this has to be my fault, because she always knew that I had lived in a different lifestyle. Like I maintained myself always in the righteous path, in church, being true to the faith, whereas she had made mistakes, right? She had departed for some time. So she felt that was a punishment. Right, for something that we wanted so badly. And I said, no, that's not, you know. La Biblia dice que herencia de Jehová son los hijos. So the kids are a gift from God. And if God's promised that, then, you know, he's going to find a way. We're going to get through this together. Right. So that to answer your question, there's moments where you kind of feel that, you know, the person, you know, you're letting the other person down. Yeah. And that's kind of the stress that it adds. So our relationship after that changed in different ways, right? From that day on. Sure. Believe it or not, even though it entered a different level of strain and stress, it became stronger. Yeah. Wow. That's because it's almost like a muscle, right? In your body, that when you give it resistance, your muscle is worked and it grows, right? Wow. So in our life, our marriage muscle was getting really worked out there. And then we became stronger together because we cried together. We ended up praying together. We ended up serving together. Right. So during this process, which took a few years, from the moment they said that, from the moment we started trying to the eventual good news of having our first child, it was 7 years. Wow. 7 long years. 7 years where it's like every Christmas was difficult on us. Oh, Father's Day. It's like I was the one that I wanted to be a father right away. So the fact that I didn't have a kid saying Happy Father's Day were tough. And what was hurting me was that everybody that I grew up with, it's like you're driving the parkway at like 20 miles an hour and everybody's like, woof, 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 just passing you. Yeah. Right? Like everybody, like I remember.
All the kids are popping up.
Everybody's having like, kids. Hello. And we were like, oh my God, because I still, believe it or not, even though those 7 years were going through that and we were facing this reality in the eyes of human, we still had faith in the eyes of God. We still had faith that it would come, but it's like the time is dragging. 2 years passed, 3 years passed, 4 years passed, 5 years passed. So everybody else, they're not waiting. They're starting to pop out kids.
Right.
And I remember telling my wife, like in a funny way, I still had refuge and hope because, believe it or not, Wilford still didn't have any kids, right? So he was like my friend, and he was like, buddy,
that's my best friend.
It's like we ride and die together. He's still waiting. We're still there. Bam, he gets married, and within like 3 months, his wife is pregnant. I'm like, great. Now I'm really alone here in this journey. So he had a kid right away. And I'm like, wow. And it's like when you're getting, you know, called and made, you know, if you're in a team and they're making teams, they start calling out one by one. And then you're
like the last one called. You're
the last one.
So in the beginning, you're like, okay, I still have 10 left, 9 left, 6 left. And you're like, I'm starting to be last. And then once you're the last player, you're like, oh, I'm the last one. So then that's when it hit us. And it's like, and throughout those years, every Father's Day, every Mother's Day. Then
it was tough.
Every time every time they presented somebody in church.
That was another question I was going to ask you, because I know you would present, or you're like your dad would present.
No, you're good.
No, you're getting into it anyways. But yeah, like how was that? Like,
I mean, you're a pastor at a church, so you're presenting these kids, you know, and you're in the forefront, right? You're seeing all the kids, right? And it's not like, you know, you get me. A non-pastor would just have to worry about, like for me, I would just have to worry about my siblings, family. That's it. But you have family, siblings, everyone, plus everyone in the church, and we're talking 500 plus members,
right?
You know,
So we had like front row seats. Literally. We sit in the front row.
Spotlight with the telescope. Like,
we're in the front row there and present, you know, my father present children, and we would see them, and it's like, you know, there's still that hope, that faith, one day that's going to be us. Yes. And she would tell me one day it's going to be us. But throughout this whole journey, you know, our relationship got so strong, and I managed to see who I was married with, because it was throughout this whole long, difficult process that I discovered that Julie was a giant in the faith. Like a giant. And when I tell you a giant in the faith, I mean it. I mean, that's an understatement. Like her faith was so strong. I was, that's when you discover these things in a
Yeah.
relationship. Like, had we
Right.
not gone through this, it was her that would maintain me, right? So I remember throughout that whole process, what's crazy is that even though my flesh was really torn apart, but my spirit was becoming strengthened more each day. And I would see that even through the midst of that moment, even the sermons got better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait,
Wow.
how is it? The spirit would flow even stronger in the sermons and the revelation of his word, and I would have these amazing moments creating my sermons by myself in the room, which was our office right next to our bedroom. Remember, that was our bedroom, our office right next to our bedroom, and the sermons would just start coming stronger. And I remember going and delivering these messages on a Sunday, empowering. And then people would come up to us and say, wow, that message really touched me. I feel empowered that I will receive my miracle, that I'm almost there, this and that. But then I would walk back into my office.
Yeah.
And then like reality would hit my flesh again.
Right.
And I would just break down right there in my office. I mean, after preaching to so many hundreds of people, and so many people say, Pastor Junior, that was an amazing message. We were edified. We were blessed. And I'm like, hey, man, yeah, that's right. God is great. God is good. And then I would just walk back. And it's all of a sudden, it's like the reality hits. She's like, you're still waiting.
Right.
It's the part that nobody sees. Man.
Nobody would see.
Right.
Nobody.
And
I would
it's such
just
a
like
tug of war
I would just
moment,
break
right?
down, and I would just
Yeah.
start weeping there and crying and just like kind of remembering the situation we're going through. And
Right.
but then I would leave out of that would make me drop in prayer, and then I would leave out of that office. It's like a cycle again, re-strengthened. Right, with God's peace and God's courage.
I feel like it's in those moments where you really get to like know who God is.
I was just gonna say that.
It
in
takes
those
that moment. Like
Absolutely.
everybody wants to get closer to God and know God, right? But it's in those moments of like that where you're really under the fire and the pressure, where like you can actually experience God's peace. Because if your life is peaceful,
Exactly.
Right.
like I mean, yeah, you can experience God's love, but it's truly in those like dark moments where God's like, I'm here,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And I like, and it's crazy because in those moments, that's when me, I would always ask God for faith.
Faith.
That was me. Like, God, give me faith.
Wow.
Even before this was happening, I just wanted faith. La Biblia dice in 2 Corinthians, you walk by faith, right? Not by sight.
Yeah.
And I would then I would say this and I would repeat it to myself, and I'm like, God, what I'm living, I know it's not what you have for me. It's not what you have for me.
Yeah.
And through this process, now I can know that I needed to go through this process to be that faith, that faith that tú dices, esa mujer de fe.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have moments like that,
Right.
how are you going to have faith?
Right.
If you don't have a sickness, how are you going to be healed?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And if I can add to that, she was the arm that I would rely on. And many people don't see that or would never think about that. Like, here I am preaching to everybody, counseling people in the weekdays and helping others that just need either premarital counseling, marriage counseling, youth, or whatever it may be. But then she was the one lifting up my arms.
Yeah.
So even though at that point she wasn't having an active, I would say, a stage presence or a strong role in the ministry, just the fact that she was lifting up my arms, by she helping me, she was helping everybody that I was helping. Because if she wasn't there,
it's like she had that faith and that hope, right?
Absolutely.
That the extra outpour that she can give you a little
Absolutely.
bit.
I
You
mean, this
know?
just goes back to say, he who finds a wife finds a good thing, right? I mean, the wives are the ones that really keep us up there. Like,
That's
I mean,
right.
Obviously, it's God through them, right?
Right.
But God blessed them in that way.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, and so after just kind of going back to when you guys had received the news of like your infertility, but also I know you mentioned that you guys have also received promises, whether it was through his word, through someone else. What was the gap between that? Like, did you guys already know as far as like God's promise for your lives as for children right away? Or was it like in the midst of like, just things happening?
I think it was, for me, for sure, it was both.
Okay.
I know we had received word about children and family before the diagnosis, through it. So it was both. It was like
Okay.
before that and through that.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah,
we
yeah,
had
it was
received
through
the
that,
word
yeah.
that. So when we heard that news, it's that's what would
It was
comfort
like
us.
how
Right.
at
It's
that
like,
point,
wait,
right?
but it can't be. But that's the reality that you're
That's-
seeing. But then your faith says other words. Believe in that promise. Believe
Yeah.
in that what I have promised unto you. So yeah, I think in our case,
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah, it
definitely, I
was-
think it was
both.
both. Like I remember I've been
Wow.
promised baby since I was like a kid. I was like, wait a minute, I'm only a kid.
You were like 13 years old.
Yeah,
You're
it's
like, I don't want kids right now, but
and your
thanks.
descendants will be chosen to be. I'm
Right.
like, what? I'm still in high school, right?
Wow.
It's like, I'm trying
I
to
mean,
get a
I
part-time
can
job.
imagine at that point, I'd be like, what?
What?
Let's not talk about this right now. Like, hold up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. But
But God knew that you were going to need that.
exactly.
Yeah.
God knew that you were
Yeah.
going to do that at some
For
point.
sure,
We
for
just
sure.
don't know his plans, you know?
All
For
right.
sure. For sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would say this whole process, because I know that other marriages, obviously we're in the faith, so it's a little different for us, but other marriages might feel like they might fall apart.
Right.
You guys didn't feel that at all. You're saying
No.
like it was just a complete
No, it
new
wasn't.
level.
Yeah.
Actually, right, it was the opposite.
It was super opposite.
Right.
Wow.
we got stronger. We
Yeah.
got stronger
Yeah.
in everything, and it's so crazy. Now that we think about it, and in that period of time, we were youth pastors.
Yeah.
So the focus was the youth.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, they
became our
became our children. We started caring for them, for you guys.
Right, right.
You know, the sleepovers, like, kind of
yeah.
hanging out with you
Right,
guys.
right.
And the focus was, every Friday, what's new. So our mind was always busy.
Right.
So,
Would you say that helped too?
that kind of helped too, and obviously, being so active in church
Right.
and just doing here and there, of course, our relationship got super strong. And
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. And throughout that whole process, we ended up meeting so many. Well, actually, no, it wasn't through the process. It was after, through our testimony, that,
You
that
started
so
meeting
many
more.
people, we started meeting people that also
Oh, yeah.
were going through the
After,
same
yeah.
thing.
Wow.
And it's like,
Testimony.
whoa, like,
Yeah.
but this is once we started having our children, we started telling about, through our microphone or on the pulpit at church about our testimony.
Yeah.
We started finding out so many other couples that were going through the same thing.
Oh, yeah. So
And it's
many
like,
That's what we were
people.
saying. Like, I feel like it's something a lot more common than
Yeah.
people
Right.
think. It's just obviously who talks about that.
right.
You
So
know?
nobody knows
or has the
until you're
opportunity to.
part of that
Correct.
group.
Right.
So if you're battling with drug addiction, you don't know that until, let's say, you're part of that. Then you'll know, oh, he
Yeah.
also suffered
Yeah.
for that. He's also
Right.
struggling with, or any other things that you might be struggling with, mental health or whatever it may
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
So once we came with that testimony, we started getting all these people that were like, wow, that's a lot of other people, including a lot of pastors.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was so many pastors that came
Yeah.
up to us asking us for
Yeah.
prayers.
Yeah.
A lot of them, which obviously for confidentiality reasons,
Yeah.
we won't be sharing. But there was so many,
Yeah.
even pastors that had come to our church, really well-known men of God,
Yeah.
that says, "Listen, have me in your prayers because we're also going through the same thing." And we're like, wow, that really shocked me to
Wow.
see how many people that were dedicated in the service of God were going through the same storm. And, we just hope that our testimony was able to, instill some
Strengthen,
strength and
yeah.
hope and faith in their lives,
Yeah.
for sure.
I
But
feel like this goes back to like when we talk about like community a lot of like the importance of like who you surround yourself
Correct,
by
yeah.
and also
true.
being able to share your testimonies, right? Because at the end of the day, whatever it is that we go through,
Right.
you
can
you
help
are
somebody.
helping out other people, whether
Correct.
people that want to share, and some people might not even ever share that they're going through an issue, you know? So that's beautiful, honestly, that now obviously after seeing your promise, like you guys are able to now help out other people,
for
which is
real.
beautiful.
Yeah, I also
Absolutely.
want to mention something because you mentioned that you were going through this process while being pastors to the youth.
Right.
I was one of the youth, and I was very vocal about not wanting to have kids, and I was almost vulgar about that idea.
like-
it's just
And
like I
people
would
like-
rebuke you almost.
If you
when I
only
would say
knew.
that. So I want to apologize too because I know that I didn't know that you guys were going through it at the time, and I remember saying, one of these days I'm gonna find a way to apologize to them because I used to always say like no, like I want nothing to do with
Right,
children. Don't even talk to me about that subject. You know, and there were many times where I would notice that Nato would look at me with like this face of like, "What's wrong with you?"
Right.
You know, and I understand. Right. You know, like I understand now.
Right.
But at the time, it's like, yo, like back up. Like,
it's like if you only knew what it is to want to have one, and not being able to have one.
It's that I was kind of sick of hearing the question.
Yeah.
Whereas I just want to enjoy my marriage.
Correct.
You know, so it again, I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. That's okay.
I do have another question though, and this was regarding the whole process, the journey, right? At any point did you guys consider adopting?
We did.
Yeah.
We spoke about it. Yeah. We said, I don't remember if we put a date, but if by certain point, you know, we asked for a sign, I think.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I know we spoke about it. I mean, we really wanted to have children to that point that we said, you know what?
We'd be willing to adopt.
We're willing to adopt if that may be the case.
Yeah. No. And we did. We put a date. We put signs because I truly believe in signs. I truly believe that God speaks to me through dreams.
Right.
And I had a dream one time, and I was like in a medical office, right? And then I just see this. The nurses were kind of like fixing everything, right? And then I'm like, why am I here? Like, what is this? And then the nurses say, you're ready. We're all ready. And then I'm like, ready for what? And then I just see the doctor, right? Doctor like coming in the office or the medical room. But it wasn't a doctor. It was just like un hombre, like resplandeciente.
Okay.
And then he said, let's do it or something. Like he said, like, we're ready. And then I just wake up.
Wow.
And then I tell Nato this dream. I'm like, babe, I think we're gonna have a baby. Like I feel it. I feel it. And then yeah, I mean, we put a. At
this point, did that turn your no into a not yet, or did you already know this was going to be a not yet kind of situation? As in, like the God's response of Him saying no to you for children. Mm-hmm. Did it at that point turn into okay, this isn't a no, this is a not yet, or did you know that way ahead of time?
A reminder. Yeah. I think it serves like as a reminder. Sometimes you have to get reminded, like, remember, there is a promise for you. Yeah. You know, like so many times we saw Jesus reminding the disciples of certain things that they already knew, that they were already taught, but you just have to be reminded. As human beings, so we did have hope, but hope sometimes can dwindle a little bit, right? And it just, and your faith, you just need to ask for more faith and pray. And so I guess when that happened, it's just like it re-strengthened, you know, our hope, our faith in that whole situation. Yeah. But there was always, and this is what the amazing thing is, that God is always there to encourage you and to bring those promises. Correct. So whether it was through a preacher or whether it was through His word, there was constantly. So throughout those 7 years, it's not like there was silence.
Yeah.
There was God always speaking, walking us.
And that's like His loving grace towards us, you know?
Absolutely.
Because some people do go through a long time in that silent period. Right. And it's, I feel like
7
that's
years. 7 years. We're 7 years married.
We're 7 years married.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So think about all that time.
Yeah. Right.
Really
but
trying.
Through this.
Right.
But through this.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we came to, we understood, and now we understand. Obviously, then the story ends up happily ever after.
Yeah. Yes. Which we obviously would love for you guys to share that.
Before we get to that, what was that portion? Well, no.
From her dream to like it happening?
So you got the dream. How at what, like, just for the timeline, at what point, and then how much longer did you wait?
I think that was towards the end of our way.
Yeah?
I think that was like a year or something. Yeah.
Or less. Something. It was really close. It was like it's almost like that push at the finish line.
Yeah, like just a little, you're almost there.
Because at that point, we were already hitting that 7 year. Yeah. That was the hardest one.
Yeah.
Wow. That was the hardest one.
Yeah. The last year?
You were feeling defeated for sure.
Yeah. That last year, it's like, that first year we're like, well, there's hope, there's faith, there's promise. Second year.
So that was the year that you were considering adopting. You were already feeling
we were close to saying, well, you know what, if it doesn't happen, then let's maybe, there's somebody else. So it was like that that push. So she had it through a dream. I had it through a certain experience. And I preached about it once where I remember I walked into my job, and this was towards the end. It was like, that's it. Like my strength was really drained at that point. And I remember walking into my job, and I walk into the server room, and I locked that server room. But I knew that day was going to be different because I had like no more strength.
Yeah.
Like it came to that point. Like I had hit rock bottom waiting because it's been 7 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's not easy at that point. And I remember I just walk into the server room. I just sit down on the chair, but it was like a sit down, like when you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like I have no more strength anymore.
Yeah.
Like this is it.
Yeah.
So I just sat there and I just began to cry. Like I couldn't say anything.
I know you're way past this moment, but I still feel so sorry.
Me too.
Me
too.
I still relive that moment.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't say anything. Like there's so many times I had a good moment of prayer, and I felt, but that day I could not say anything. I was just
didn't have the
weeping,
strength anymore.
weeping. And then in that moment, I just remember the experience. I remember that room, server rooms, if you don't know, obviously they're really, really cold because there's a lot of computer devices. Yeah. So those rooms have to be really cold. So as I'm there, I just feel the room becomes really hot. Really hot. And I shared this, remember, in a preaching once. It was titled Putting a Name on Your Miracle. Still remember. Poniéndole
I
un nombre
remember that.
a tu milagro, right?
Yeah.
So I'm there in that server room, and it gets really, really hot. And then all of a sudden, I feel like somebody touches me. But I'm like, in a moment, it's like I was out of, this world in that moment. Like I wasn't physically
it's like a
there.
Supernatural.
It was a supernatural moment for sure. And I feel a hand, but I'm just there weeping, and I hear a name, and I hear Joshua.
Wow.
Right? And I'm just there crying, and I understand that was the name God was giving me for my son.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I just get this peace, right? This supernatural peace. This like strength like never before. Like, I mean, I could walk up there. I could have walked out of that server room and resurrected a dead person if I had seen one. Like, I had faith beyond imagination at that point. Right. But once I finished that moment, it was almost like an hour or an hour and a half in that server room. I remember that I'm like, well, who touched me? Like, then it's like, wait a minute, what just happened?
You think back.
Right, now you're thinking back in that moment. It's like, wait, what happened? And then I walk up to them, like, maybe somebody came in. But then I walked in and I realized the server room is still locked. So nobody impossibly could have came inside. I had locked it from the inside.
Right.
And in that moment, I really understood that it was a visitation from God in my life to just seal the deal, push you through that finish line. And I remember I heard just write it down, and I'm like, and I'm looking for a pencil and I'm looking for paper, and there's nothing there. Everything's like
computers,
it's electronically.
cables.
I was about to type it in the server room. I was about to have a message to every single laptop, all right? And as I'm there, I find a little piece of cardboard there. So I rip that out, and then I'm like, and then I find a little broken pencil, right, in the floor. And then I write the name. I write the name of Joshua. And Joshua Castro, and I put the date because I needed to seal that moment, right? I put the date.
The date that happened.
That moment, right. I put that date, and I didn't realize at the moment, but once I displayed it, I realized there's 3 drops on that cardboard. It was still from me weeping. Like when I took the picture, and I remember I showed it in the preaching on the big screen, and it becomes magnified. I'm like, whoa, yeah, there's proof of that moment. There was like 3 drops, and I believe that even in the numbers there was a representation. God Himself, Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit was there confirming that. And that's where that sermon came of putting a name to your miracle. And after that, we didn't know yet, and this happened like around April. But like I said, it's the finish line. Yeah. And then we got the news in October that she was pregnant. Yeah. And it's like, and I knew it was a boy. We didn't need, we ended up getting the result.
We'll do it.
We'll do it just
for giggles.
for sure. And we knew that it was going to be a boy.
Yeah.
And there was a promise when there's a biblical verse where God promises Solomon. It says, if you were to be and walk in the ways that your father David did, my servant, there shall never be a lack of men that will reign in your place in all of Israel, right? Because there's always that thought of who's next in the kingdom, who's next. And God gave him that promise. So I really knew that God was telling me, your first son is going to be a boy. Because there was always that thought. It's like, I had been there for my father. Who's going to be there for me?
Right.
Right. When it's time for me eventually later down to.
So you guys are ministry
Ministry-wise,
to
retire, to pass the baton, to pass the mantle. Who am I doing that to? So that was another reason I constantly was stressed about what happens. When are you going to have a kid? Like, my dad had me. Who do I have?
Right.
So when, he gives me that word, like, don't worry, you'll have your son. And look at that. We had the first son.
My baby Joshua.
How was it? I know. I was just saying,
awesome.
how was it though? You finding out, like, was it?
Oh
just
yeah,
like,
what was your
that
reaction?
just like a normal, like, let me take a pregnancy test? Because I know, like, there's different ways of.
Yeah,
right?
we actually went to the doctor and we did a pregnancy test.
Oh, over there.
And then
Okay.
that's when they for blood. And then they called us. And I didn't want to pick it up because I wasn't with him at that time. So they left a message saying, call us back. And then when he picked me up, because I remember I got out of work, he picked me up and they were like, I got the phone call. And he's like,
but you don't know that it's a positive.
No.
So you're excited.
Yeah.
Because like you feel it in your heart that you know.
Something's different.
Something's different about this call.
Yeah. So we're like, okay, I got a phone call. Let's sit down and let's park the car.
Oh my God. My stomach would have been in a twirl.
Yeah.
We were super nervous.
Yeah.
We were like super nervous. We were like anxious. We were like, all the emotions were going.
Right.
So we call and then the nurse gives us the good news that, you guys are pregnant. And then we click, and then that's when we start crying.
You hung up on her?
No, after the conversation.
You guys are pregnant. Click. Oh my God.
We're pregnant. Okay.
All right.
No, I mean, obviously, we finished the conversation. Thank you very much, whatever. The follow-up and whatever. And then we, obviously we clicked, and then that's when we hugged each other and we started crying.
Right.
Because it was,
That's
the news is so impact,
Right.
Did you have any symptoms prior to the test? Or you had to
like for you to know
it was
that
just
you
a
were
checkup
like,
that you had to do.
I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
Like, I don't know anymore. I got my baby.
Remember, it was I know.
No, I was just curious.
At that point, you get so many tests.
Wow,
You're going through. It's not your average just relationship where it's like, oh, the time I missed the time of the month, so now I must be. No, it was so many things. It's like
you're so calculated.
It's like in technology when you've done so many steps, but the problem fixed. You're like, which one of the 100 steps that I did fixed it, or which one of them was that?
Okay.
So it was so many. I just remember. And plus, we're getting older, so our memories are getting affected. I just know.
Right?
You're scaring me now.
I just do remember that phone call that day, and obviously that changed our lives. But even then, see, life throughout your whole process, it's continuously growing. Your faith is continuously being tested because I remember mentioning how that the second worst day was the day we were told we were infertile.
Right.
But the biggest worst day that tops
this
that,
is what I want to hear.
Right, that tops that. Like, what can possibly
Which is crazy, right? What can top?
You would think. So here we fast forward years down. She's pregnant. We're having the best time of our life. Yeah. We are going for the first full ultrasound, right? At like
I was 3 months.
3 months pregnant. 3 months pregnant.
Right.
So that day is the best day. We're gonna go see our baby for the first time. Mind you, remember everything. After 7 years, over all the impossibilities, our eyes are gonna see him. Yeah. So we go to the doctor. We get the ultrasound. We see him there. Like the moment was
everything you wanted it to be.
Moment. Absolutely.
It was so cute.
Like we cried. We laughed together. Here is our Joshua on the screen. Yeah. So it was the best day. And we were rejoicing, but little did we know that 2 hours later, our best day was about to become our worst day. Oh, yeah. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
Like, how do you go
so quickly? Yeah.
From the happiest
and you're
moment,
describing this as the worst day in your marriage.
No, as the worst day in my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Of our life. Not only marriage, I'm talking about our lives put together.
Wow.
So we headed back home. and we're happy. We have the ultrasound pictures, right? And we're here to show my dad. My dad couldn't come with us, so we're showing him. He's excited. The whole family's excited, and I'm with my mom in the living room.
You're like showing everyone.
Yeah, we're this and that, and all of a sudden, I just hear her voice in a. You know, when your wife calls you and there's a panic in her tone. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you've heard your spouse, but you immediately know something's not wrong. So she's like, babe, but you've been with this person so many years.
You know all the tones.
Yeah.
You know the tones.
Yeah.
And I know something's not right. She's like, babe, can you come here? And I'm walking, but my stomach is already like bubbling. I'm like, what's happening? And when I walk in there, she is crying. She's like, babe, something's not right. And then, you could elaborate.
Yeah. So I went to go use the restroom. And then when, getting out, I start bleeding. Like bleeding.
Heavy.
Like,
yeah.
It was crazy. So that's when I call him and I'm like, babe, come here. And then, he comes. Right. And then I was holding myself. I'm like, I'm bleeding a lot. I need to go to the hospital. And he his face literally just changed.
I'm sure you
pale.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah. He was super pale. So I called my doctor and she goes, come over. So I go over and
she's crying the whole
and I'm crying the whole way, but
right, because bleeding could be somewhat normal, right? But
a little bleeding.
A little
like spotting.
Yeah, spotting
Correct.
can be normal,
Correct.
but not heavy.
Like miscarriage type of bleeding level.
Right.
So I was holding myself, but every time I kind of released my hand, it was just psh, you know what I'm saying? Sorry for the expression.
No.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We're all adults.
It was just it was so much. I was so scared, but at the same time, it was so crazy. I had peace. I was just like, thank you for my baby, God. Thank you for my baby. On the way over there.
But you're fighting because at the same time you were crying.
Yeah.
And I remember I was crying. So, I mean, you're declaring from a point of spiritual faith, but the reality is telling you something else.
No,
it's you have so many thoughts going. I'm driving there and I'm like, this can't be.
Yeah.
I mean, we finally
got the promise.
Yeah. Like Abraham, he finally had his son out of so many time of believing for a miracle. And it's like the possibility of it all being gone.
Right.
Like I just saw him in a picture.
Yeah. Right.
So it's like, my God,
you just showed your dad, you just showed your family.
Reliving it. Sometimes we're driving and when we're heading to that hospital or that clinic, for regular checkups now.
It's like PTSD, basically.
We remember that day. And I'm like, Julie, do you remember that day?
Yeah, it was crazy.
How we went from the best moment, the happiest moment, to the worst moment in that day. And as we drive
there, it had to be that day, too.
And it had to be.
Right, of all days. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Satan is a liar.
Oh, my God.
The devil is a liar. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we get there and they don't explain themselves. This is not normal. This is not good.
She's
right?
like, I go straight to the room and she checks me. She goes, everything's okay. We don't know why you're bleeding. And, everybody's like, there's another doctor. And it's like, I'm there. And they're like,
Well, that first doctor wasn't too optimistic. Because I remember, here we go again with that nauseous gut punch feel. Like this was the second time. I remember that first one. I remember she was like the interim midwife.
The midwife.
That I remember even thinking, well, I want to see the other ones, the other ones, because she's like, this is the same. But I remember having that feeling again in that room. I became nauseous again because of the bad news. She's like, this doesn't look good. Yeah. And that's all for them to say that, because they usually don't like to give you any fear. But for her to say that, it's like, she's like, listen, we're gonna keep honoring you. Go home.
Yeah, I had to stay there.
We wanna see you in like 3 days if this continues. And she continued bleeding. And then once again on the ride back home, God gave us a word in that, and we remember de la mujer del flujo de sangre, right?
Yeah.
And then there was a word that just gave us peace. And then it wasn't up to like a few days later that we went back, and they did hear the heartbeat, but they even considered, they even gathered between, they had never seen that. They called her. Remember what they called you?
Mysterious bleeder.
What in the world?
Mysterious bleeder.
Oh, they gave you a nickname.
Yes.
They didn't know why or how I was bleeding that much.
Right.
And the baby was
okay. Like that's what they didn't understand.
And the baby
How
was
is the
okay.
fact that she could still be bleeding?
You know what? This could have been a test of faith, and you guys
Absolutely.
really pulled
Test
through.
of faith.
Absolutely.
They were just trying to rob your joy.
Right.
Like there's so much. Wow.
Right,
No.
absolutely.
It was
So,
crazy.
and then obviously everything ended up. So that pregnancy fell forever.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Because
You were like, I just really want my
It's
baby
like-
now
it's
out.
like, I can only
Not
imagine-
even pregnant. I just want him out now and
Yeah.
alive and there. I want to see
Those 9
it.
months.
Yeah, but I can imagine like in that the 9 months, you're thinking, man, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every
Right.
day I would call her. Hey,
Are you okay?
how's it going?
Yeah.
Has the
Yeah,
bleeding-
I don't blame you.
has the
I
bleeding
don't
calmed
blame you.
down?
Because I was bleeding for like a month and something.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's a
so it
really long
wasn't
time.
like
Yeah.
a
No,
1,
This
2,
isn't like
3
some
day.
No, it wasn't like
menstrual
a week or
like
no.
pattern or anything
No,
like that.
I was bleeding
Not
for
at
like a good like month and like something.
That's why they called her mysterious because
Yeah.
they could not understand how this could continue. But
Yeah.
everything around the kids, the
Was
baby's
okay.
vitals were okay. And little did we know that obviously now we
like
understand
God's
that it was
protecting
God
him, you
protecting.
know?
Like Joshua was
Yeah.
there. You know, Joshua has been, now that you guys know who he is,
He
right?
was chilling.
You know, you can just speak to my son for 5 minutes, and you know that God has a purpose in his
Yeah.
life. Like
Yeah.
he's been called, and he's a testament of God's faithfulness, and we just knew that he was there in God's hands,
hands.
being protected until the day of his birth. But yeah, those 9 months
Oh my
became
God, it
like
was-
9 years. Like it's like, when is it? Is it 6 months? When is it going to be over? Like it was that moment because of what we had just lived throughout that. But
Wow.
and then, you know, Joshua was born on June 24th, 2017.
Yeah.
Right? And then
He's like, right?
yeah, 2017. And then after that, after a year and a half of him being born, then we're like, okay, well, if God did it once,
You
He
can
could
do it
do it
again.
do it again. And we're like, okay, God. And again, we continued having to wait. Again, believing for a miracle.
Right.
Yes.
But I knew
Right.
that if God did it once, he could do it again. And here we go. The story
Waiting
repeats
again.
itself.
How was
A
your
year
waiting period, the comparison from the first to the second? Would you say the second there was definitely a different kind of strength there?
back.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
think so.
I think
yeah.
so.
And on top of that, you are a father and
Right.
you are a mother.
Yeah.
So
You
it's a
get to
little
have a child to
different.
celebrate
Yes.
Christmas with,
Right.
Mother's Day, Father's Day, and
Yeah.
all
Right,
those things.
right.
You know, because
Right.
I'm thinking about the guys and the girls too that are trying to have a baby and they're going through what you guys
Right.
went through.
Right, for
You know, having to celebrate Father's Day and Mother's Day, and man, I'm not a father yet.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
right,
and I
exactly.
when you said that, oh my God,
Felt that for
man.
people.
Like
Yeah,
I
for
feel
sure.
so bad for
Right.
who, like it's like I gain a new perspective, right? It's a
real.
whole new lens
For real,
to
for real.
this story, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's like, man, yeah, you know, like they don't get to celebrate these days
Right,
that are dedicated around being a
Just-
father or
Yeah.
a mother.
It's
And they're
almost like
just
Valentine's
reminders.
Day for people that don't have
Don't have
yeah, like the
Right.
couples. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
That's true.
February 14th.
That is
Right.
So for us, Father's Day, Mother's Day, we're like, all right, is it over yet?
Yeah.
Is it finally the
Right.
next
Like,
day?
let's
Yes,
just get
fine.
past this.
Let's just get
Oh,
past
man.
this for sure.
Yeah.
And that's basically how we ended up
Story.
having to wait a few more years, but from a
5
different
years.
perspective, it was once again, it's 5 years. It's like
With no
5 years.
trouble, everything was good, or
Well,
I'm
they
talking about
had a
forwards.
waiting period.
Yeah.
no,
they
I
said.
know,
Right.
but I'm talking about we didn't have another mysterious bleeding.
No.
No,
It was
Okay.
the 9 months
Bleeding.
went and it went
Yeah,
well.
it went
Okay.
it went
Yes,
smooth,
yes.
but we still had to wait those 5 years. Still, again, our faith tested again, but we
Yeah,
had a word. We
correct,
knew it was gonna.
correct.
Yes.
God had spoken prophetically that
Yeah.
it was gonna be a girl.
And it's so crazy because 6 months after I had Joshua, they were closing Babies R Us, right? And I always wanted my little girl too.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I have Joshua. He's 6 months, and I grabbed una pijamita, a onesie, and I decía my little sister or something like that. And I said,
Aw.
babe, this is for my little girl.
That's
And Nato
that's
was
really
like,
cute.
and
That
I'm-
is
and Nato
really
was like,
cute.
babe, really? And I'm like, yes, because I'm gonna have my
That's
baby
cute
girl.
and such a prophetic act of faith too.
Exactly.
Listen,
Exactly. I
you
told you she
have
was a
to.
giant of faith.
You have to.
Right.
You have to walk.
Plus,
By
if it was
faith.
closing, you're like $10. Let's take it.
This ain't coming again. with this price.
Yeah.
But I could definitely say that one thing we learned through the whole process was that you have to persevere and just believe, continue
Yes.
believing and having faith that God will he will fulfill his promises.
Right.
It might be different. Every story
Yes.
will be different.
Correct.
Not too long ago, I was reading a few Bible verses in Mark chapter 8. And it's only 4 verses, but this small little story kind of talks about a lot what we were going through, how sometimes certain healings won't happen immediately. Sometimes there's a process.
Yeah.
For some, it might be immediately.
Right.
For some others, it might take you through a journey, right? For us, it was a journey. But in Mark chapter 8, it says, verse 22, and they came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. Verse 23, he took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asks, do you see anything? Mind you, this is a blind man we're talking about. And verse 24 says, he looked up and said, I see people. They look like trees walking around. So the first indication that when you read this is that, okay, he receives his sight, but it's still in process. Because if you're looking, but now all of a sudden he sees like trees moving around. So you're not where you were, but you're not where you want to be. Right? So this is this blind man's procedure at this point. Jesus touches him. He makes the mud. He puts on his eyes, but he can see, but it's still blurry. Yeah. Like the job isn't complete yet, right? There's a process. And then verse 25 says, once more, Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Wow. So this story in itself is such a beautiful thing. And I think it encourages any viewers that are watching that there might be miracles. See, Jesus worked in different ways. There were some people that he spoke it. Right. And he says, receive your healing, be healed. He never touched. There was others that he touched and they were healed immediately. And it says, and immediately he got up, the paralytic that was paralyzed, immediately he began up and he began to walk. Like some people will receive the miracle immediately. Some might not. Yeah. Some might be living and walking on a day by day on a promise that God's given them. And this blind man, that was his case, right? Yeah. Like he goes, Jesus prays for him once. And he sees things blurry. He sees like trees walking. Well, God's not done yet. Yeah. And that's the case with some of us. It's like we get, desesperados where we don't receive that miracle immediately. But wait, God's still working. And the Bible says that Jesus once again touches him again. And it's like, wait, was it that the first touch wasn't enough? Like, was it that Jesus is this animated character that needed to reload on his touch, right? Like power up again? Like, what is this first
wasn't
one?
Charged yet.
Yeah, it was like, why would you would think one touch for the Messiah is good enough, but for the woman of the bleeding, situation that she had,
she just touched the mantle.
That was just enough. One touch was enough. But with this guy, it required a second one. But it's not because of Jesus. It's not because his touch wasn't powerful enough. It was maybe the man's faith level. Maybe the situation he was going through, this level of faith just needed, again, to Christ to be able to talk. And that's why we came back to that whole, sometimes God gives us reminders of his promises and his faith. But in the beginning, I was talking to Julie on the way here that how beautiful. I was like, listen to this. I put even some pad music in the car. I love my pad music. And I read those first Bible verses. I was like, listen to this. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. And it's interesting how he could have performed this miracle where he was. Yeah. But he didn't. He knew the journey this blind man had gone through. Yeah. He wanted to walk with him for a while. Yeah. Like, can you picture that moment? Like, here you are, you're blind. And the Messiah, the living Christ, grabs you by the hand. And he walks you out. So that's a long walk outside of the city, of the village. Alone. What was that conversation like? Right? Yeah. Right? In the moments. So sometimes we want that miracle right away. But if we don't receive that miracle, if we don't have that time of wait, maybe we don't have those long talks with God. Yeah. And that's what we went through. Oh, wow. There were so many moments.
That's so good.
And I get goosebumps right now talking about that. Because throughout those 7 years, we had long moments of our interceding in our bedrooms, in our office. Like, we had the most amazing moments that I had in the presence of God because we were walking through that trial. But there's some moments that God allows it to happen, to wait. He wants to have that walk with you.
He wants that one-on-one with you.
One-on-one. I was just like, can you imagine? What was that conversation like, Adrian? Like, you're walking with Jesus and he's walking with you, and here you are, you're blind. He's like, wait, be careful. Don't walk through there. Yeah. But I can imagine that as he walks with Christ, his faith had to grow. Right. I mean, you don't walk for a few minutes with Jesus.
And not get transformed. Like,
are
hello.
you kidding me?
Be the same.
Right.
You cannot. It's impossible. But sometimes the delay has to happen. He took his time, walked them out of the village, and then gave them the miracle. And it's almost like with Lazarus, right? He still delayed his coming. Could have healed them right away, rushed, but the Bible says that he
There's
delayed.
always a process.
There's always a process, right? And then there's always a meaning.
And everyone's
to that
process is different.
Yeah, it's
so
different. And I love that he walked him through, the village. I feel like that's like in our lives, like whatever we go through, we have to understand that God is with us.
Right.
Yeah.
He's
Wherever we go,
whatever we're going through.
Yeah.
He has us in our hands. Así como chiquito,
Right.
crossing the street. Así, that's how he is with us.
and it's always interesting. It's how the breakthrough always happens with our lowest point.
Absolutely.
Right.
You mentioned you sat down and that was it.
Broke.
And that's when the breakthrough
Look at
for
that.
you, that's where
For
it's
sure.
just like,
For sure. For sure.
flip.
that's where it just flips for us.
Prophet Hosea says, and I shall take her to the desert and I shall speak to her heart. Like I had a preaching once about the importance of deserts and how the importance of you have to go all the way over there. And that's what he would speak to you. Because sometimes we're so busy with everything that if he doesn't take you to the desert,
we need to.
then you won't pay attention.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
won't
you'll
pay-
miss
Yeah,
it.
actually,
You'll-
Israel mentioned this. I mean, I'm sure you know this, but Israel mentioned this in our podcast, and he's like, sometimes God Himself, He'll lower the noise, take you away
Absolutely.
to get you away from the noise,
Yeah.
so that way you can hear. And
And
tune yourself
especially
to
in the way our lifestyles are now, not just like us, right? Like, or just this country in general. We're like in this hustle culture, right? Where it's like sometimes it's like God's like, yo, I'm trying to talk to you.
Yeah.
You're just too busy for me.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, for sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
but being on this end, like seeing it, and obviously, like I didn't get to, experience it with you guys those 7 years, but definitely hearing it and then seeing God's promise come, and then again with like Ellie, it's like it's honestly like such a beautiful thing to see, and like just recently, like I held Ellie, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so tiny, she's so cute and so calm, and then. I was just thinking, I was like, wow, like you are God's promise,
That's
like
right.
God had
That's
you
right.
saved and
I
separated.
see Josh when I'm like,
Yeah,
like,
Josh,
this-
I love
this
him.
homie, this little guy, man.
He is
He
so
walks with so much
smart.
personality.
Yes, he does.
He knows what he went through, I guess. He knows everything that it took
Yeah,
for him
yeah.
to come to this world, for
Yeah.
sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
no,
That's a beautiful thing about all this process, that the God's in control, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't mean you're not going to go into fire furnace. You
Of
will
course.
be. You will walk in there, and it might get heated 7 times stronger, but there's a promise that He shall be with you. And there was a Bible verse, right? You remember?
Isaías 43. You're going to pass through the waters, but I'm going to be there with you, You're going to pass through the fire, but you're not going to get burned.
Yeah.
You're going to pass through it. It's not going to, he didn't say you're going to, you're going to stay there or you're going to fly. No, you're going to pass through it, but I'll be there.
So we just gave 716 members a sneak peek of the next, I guess, one of the next sermons. So you guys have a sneak peek there of what we're going to preach. I think we're going to preach it together, actually.
Wow.
Actually, I feel we should do that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh my
You know what?
gosh,
That's
yes,
awesome.
We should preach one
girl.
of our next sermons. We got to
Yeah,
schedule.
That would
for
be so
sure.
cool.
Because
Yeah,
I
go
hear her, it's funny. It's like obviously like we've heard you like preach and everything, but it's
Hey,
like
you're
we
tired
don't.
of me every
no,
other
no,
Sunday.
no, it's not that. It's that we don't hear Julie that
No,
much.
it's always nice to
sometimes.
see something different, like when you did it with your mom.
Right.
For the first time. That was interesting.
Yeah,
we
so
definitely will do it one of these days again.
Yeah.
Now Ellie's a little bigger, so
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
we have plenty of
know.
babysitters in church.
I know. I'm sure.
That's good.
Sure. For sure.
Well, I know that we're coming to an end already. I know that you guys gave your a tremendous testimony.
Yeah, so beautiful.
If you could just to summarize because I know that there's many families that are currently trying. I mean, they're 3 months in and they're starting to question, or 5 months in, 6 months in, whatever the timeline is, and they might starting to feel doubt, or they might be listening to this and like, wait, will that be my story?
Right.
If you guys could, in a quick summary, give them some words of encouragement towards faith.
Sure.
Sure, yeah. I feel like sometimes we just have to go to Christ and just leave everything and surrender everything to God. Our fears, our anxieties, our worries, everything that's going around us, not focus on that. Focus on Jesus. Focus on Jesus. And I am you can call me old school, but if you need something, you're looking for something, pray.
Right.
Yeah.
Looking for something, an answer, anything, pray.
Yeah.
That is the most important. That's the key for me. You know, prayer and ask for faith. You know, my prayer when I wanted, you know, my children, my prayer changed. Yeah. Right. Instead of saying, God, give me my kids, I would say, God, give me faith. Because without faith, it's impossible to please God. To please God. So that's those are my words.
You see why I want her to preach with me one of these Sundays? Absolutely. You said it all. But I, from my perspective, like I said, just piggybacking a little bit what she said, is just that faith, that faith will be tested, but God will fulfill his promises. And the true faith is that trust in God, that faith, that trust that God can do it. Yeah. I don't know how, I don't know, even if God were to decide not to do it, and I talked about it once about even the 3 Hebrews, that's the faith that helped me throughout those 7 years. Even though I had a promise, but for those that might not know, is it God going to do it for sure? I would look back always on the 3 Hebrews, and right before the furnace, right before they're about to be thrown in there, they said something that really blew my mind. They said, our God can deliver us from this furnace. But if he doesn't, see, a lot of people are not willing to say that. Yeah. What if he doesn't?
People don't like the no's.
The not yet. But if he doesn't, we won't bow our knees to the image, and we'll still serve our God. Correct. So that's true faith, where you know that God can do it, but you just trust in him, that he knows best. And that's the point that we got. We're saying he knows best. And I think every couple, every situation, not only in
not only in fertility, just like waiting on a promise,
anything. That knowing that he's in control. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will answer the prayers, the desires of your heart. But you first have to delight yourself. You know, find the delight in him. And we didn't look for God or work for God because we wanted to have this or that
benefit.
No, for benefits, right? We just we fell in love. You know, we've always been in love with our Lord and Savior, and that's I think it should be. You should just love God, you know, above all other things, right? With all your heart, all your strength, all your mind. And I think once you do that, it's like, okay, now he's ready to just pour on you.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Man, you guys, I'm telling you this story. I knew this story was going to be so good. Yeah. It's such a blessing, honestly.
And to hear it on a different perspective, right? Because we did hear, you know, because you did give a sermon on it and stuff, but it's like hearing like the little in-between details.
For sure.
Yeah, because you can only do so much within
I know. You're like, listen, I got 40 minutes.
I know. For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. No. And one more thing, I mean, if you guys could do a quick prayer for those families that are currently trying, that are looking at this,
for sure,
before we close off.
Absolutely. Yes. I think definitely a woman of faith could lead us in that prayer for sure. It was your faith that got us through our situation, and I think it's only divine from God appointed that you could lead many others also with that same faith.
Yes. Let's bow our heads, guys. Amen. Ay, Padre Celestial, Señor, estamos aquí delante de ti, Señor, pidiéndote, Señor, por fortaleza, por guianza, Señor, for strength, peace, Lord, for all those families out there, God, listening to this podcast, God, that are looking for an answer, God, are looking for una respuesta, Señor, un sign of your, Lord. May you give them the strength that they need, God, open their eyes, Lord, to what you really want them to see, Lord. I pray for faith, God. Put faith in their hearts, God. Faith that they cannot resist, Lord, that they can see what they do not have around them, God. We declare, God, healing, Lord. We declare joy, God, in the middle of the mist that they're going through, Lord, that we declare, God, happiness, my God. Lord, these families that are listening, God, you have them in their hands, God, in your hands, God. May you lift their spirit, God, and you pour your spirit on them, God, so they can believe that you are the God of impossibles, my God. Lord. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Oh, wow. That was just, I'm telling you, like these things, we don't even know
We're
how
an hour and 40 in.
We're an hour and 40. I told you.
I'm sorry. It's always a danger to get a pastor in front of a mic. I'm telling you. You should have been more before that.
Oh, guys, honestly, well, first of all, thank you for not only, sharing your testimony today, but also taking the time because, You guys have church ministry. You
Yeah.
guys have babies. You
Yeah.
guys have all of that. So we understand like everything it took for you guys to be here. So we really appreciate you guys from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you
being
guys for the
here.
invite.
Thank you so much. We enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
We couldn't wait to be here.
I mean, it's at this timing, but I bet you it's the perfect timing.
Absolutely.
Whoever's gonna,
Yeah.
whoever
Someone,
needed it,
yeah.
they're needing it now.
You said
Yeah.
it. Definitely. I want to congratulate you guys
Yes,
on this
so
channel,
awesome.
on,
Aw,
on
thank
this
you.
podcast that
Yeah.
you guys have. I know that it also takes time from your busy schedules, but just
Yeah.
the time set aside. I've seen you guys grow in the faith when you got there, and just to see you. And every time I see the podcast and I just start seeing Xavier speak, and I'm like, Lord, keep using his life, as an
Amen.
instrument. And
Amen.
Adrian,
It's all to
obviously.
glorify God.
Absolutely. So
Amen.
congratulations.
And to
Keep up the
encourage
good work.
other
Yeah.
Thank
Amen.
you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
But all right, guys, thank you so much for sticking around and staying tuned to this podcast that has been long waited for it to
Yes.
finally air up on YouTube. But I hope that it's been a blessing to all of you and to all of you that are currently in this situation or in this process, this character developing process that God has you in. I pray that He continues to give you that faith that you are asking for and that you may continue and receive that blessing.
Amen.
Amen.
Guys, thank you again. I
Thanks
hope
for
you guys like this
tuning
video.
in.
If there's anything that you liked about this, guys, please hit them up. They're on Instagram. If they're on Instagram,
We're here to serve.
I'll put their handles here.
Yes.
But guys, again,
Thanks
leave
for
a comment,
tuning in.
subscribe if you haven't, and hit
Like
that
and
like
subscribe,
button.
guys.
Yes.
Like and subscribe.
Bye,
Amen.
guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Wow.
Wow, that was fast.
I'm telling you, it
An
goes
hour
by
and 40.
so
Yeah,
fast.
it goes by
I
like
told
that.
you that's how it happens. We're like, yeah,